Hello and welcome back. In my last video we discussed the creativity toys and gameplay toys needed for my Calodan Magistrate challenge. And we began making the basic logic connections for the level startup and the challenge maker. In this video we will discuss the logic connections for the first phase of the challenge, the forest phase. My name is Rich and let's get started. First we'll start out with just a quick review of our logic gates that control the various phases of the challenge maker. As you recall from the previous video, this first one controls everything that happens when the invites are accepted. And our second logic gate controls everything that happens when the challenge is started. And our third logic gate controls everything that happens when the player either ends the challenge or completes the challenge by winning the game. We're going to come back to our logic gate for when the challenge is started, and we're going to make a new logic connection on output. And we'll come up to the repeater that we placed on top of the wall previously. This is for our bell sounds that begin the challenge. And we're going to turn the repeater on. Quick look at the properties here. I believe the default rate is 5, and that's right where I left it, so that works out just fine. You can leave it at 5. And now we will begin our connections here off the repeater to our sound effects generator to begin ringing the bells. So new logic connection, and we're going to select repeat. And we will connect this to our sound effects generator under the general category. And we'll come down and we'll look for the church bell. So this mimics when the henchmen, the magistrate's henchmen, were ringing the bell, sending the alert that Ahsoka was out in the forest. So that will start the repeating of that, and new logic connection on our sound effects, our properties. Sound 3D sound at speaker locator off and volume at 100. There is no logic connection on that, it's just showing the properties. Okay, we're going to come over to our time delayer, take a look at the quick properties on this, and I set it to 12. The longer you set this time value, the more times the bell will ring. At 12, it'll ring precisely 3 times. It's about 4 seconds per ring. If you set it to 16 seconds, it'll ring 4 times. If you set it at 20 seconds, it'll ring 5 times, so on and so forth. So back to our repeater, new logic connection when turned on, we want to start our delay. And then our time delayer, new logic connection. When the delay is completed, we're going to come back to our repeater and turn it off. And like I said, that 12-second delay will allow the church bell to ring 3 times. Also on our time delayer, new logic connection, when the delay is completed, we will come over to this logic gate and we're going to make an input to it. This is what's going to begin the enemy phases for both the forest phase and the town phase, which we will discuss in the next video. And that's just showing the connections there. Okay, when the delay is completed, we're also going to come down not to our first text displayer but our second text displayer, and we're going to have a message displayed here. So we'll come down to the survival modes, and we are going to tell the player to prepare for enemy attack. So that was off the time delayer as well when the delay was completed. Okay, back to our second logic gate here. New logic connection on output. We're going to come back to our logic gate and we're going to open it. This is because when our first phase, the force phase, is complete, we're going to close that gate. And that's what will allow the enemies to be generated for the town phase without regenerating them again for the forest phase. So that's an important step. Also make sure that this gate is open when you start the challenge so that the enemies will generate in the forest phase. Just a quick look at the notes here again. So on new logic connection on output, because this gate is open right now, we're going to input into our first enemy generator for the forest phase to generate the wave. And how I configured my wave, I have 11 enemies. And I did that for memory control. We have the Melito hired gun, 2 of them. We have 2 of these long-range Nikito thugs. A Nikito thug with axe, 1 of them. A Nikito thug with baton, 1 of those. The Kyuzo blade, just 1. Unkar's hammer, 1. Melito hired thug, 1 of those, and 2 of our Guavian gang members. So I have 6 long-range enemies and 5 short-range. I could have possibly gone with some more, but my memory runs up in the red when all 11 of these are generated. So I went with 11 just for a nice smooth gameplay without any lags or glitches in the game. So showing here just in the enemies drawer where you can find these various enemies. The properties. I'm generating a random locator because I have 11 enemies, but I spread out, connected to 15 locators and spread them out through the forest area. This way it'll randomize a little bit where these enemies generate, so it's not the same every single time. We'll discuss the locator connection here a little bit later on in the video. Alright, once again, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. We come to our second enemy wave generator. We're going to generate this wave. So it'll be 2 waves of 11 in the forest phase. Same exact enemies. So it gives you a total of 22 enemies to fight, split up across 2 enemy waves, just for being able to manage your memory. Generate random locator is on, 0 on the generation delay, and disable generation effects are on. I do this for all my enemy waves because I don't want the generation effects to clue the player into as to where the enemies are. That's the whole point of having the smoke, is to reduce the visibility and make it a little more of a surprise. Now, when the enemy is defeated for both of these, we need to input into our counter an increment by 1. And we'll do the same one with the second one here, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. We'll go back to our counter and we will increment by 1. In our properties, target count is set to 2 and my visible display is set to off. You could have it on. I chose off. I preferred it that way just to add to the mystery of the game. Make it a little bit less apparent as to where the player was in defeating the enemies. So new logic connection. When the target is reached, now we will come up here and we will close this gate. That means that the next time that the bell rings and the time delayer inputs a signal to it, that signal will be blocked because the gate is closed. And that's why we are using this logic gate when the game is started or the challenge is started to come back and reopen this logic gate. And that's just what I'm reviewing here, was the challenge starter logic gate is reopening our logic gate for our church bell and the repeater. Also, we'll come back to our counter here. And we're going to do a new logic connection. Again, when the target is reached, we will come over to our boombox and we'll turn off the music, because we're going to have a new piece of music playing once the town phase begins. Again, back to our counter. New logic connection when target is reached. And we're going to deactivate this trigger area that displays the text when the player attempts to enter the town before completing our forest phase. So we want that turned off. We're also going to do target reached here, new logic connection, target reached. And we're going to come over and we're going to activate the trigger area to open the main gate doors to allow the player to enter the town area once the forest phase has been completed. And just moving that back into place where it would normally sit. Okay, so our counter is being used to control when the player can move from the forest phase into the next phase of the game, the town phase. So once again, we'll come back, new logic connection when target reached, and we're going to activate our radar marker. And this radar marker will be placed at the entrance door of the main gate. So properties, we've selected yellow arrow. The beacon location is set to the locator. And its active is turned off. And that is connected to this locator here, placed in front of the main gate entrance. So you can see that's already been connected to the radar maker for the location. So when the forest phase ends, there'll be a yellow radar marker there, indicating that it's okay for the that the game has moved on to the town phase for the player to advance into the town. New logic connection entered player any. And we're going to come back to our radar marker. So once the player enters the town, we're going to come back and deactivate that radar marker. That's why I moved the trigger area, the first trigger area, out of the way so I could correctly point to the trigger area for the main gate. Okay. For our enemy waves in the town phase, I've already connected 15 locators and placed them throughout the forest area of the toy box. Remember, each phase is generating 11 enemies for each of the 2 enemy wave generators. And the properties are set to generate at a random locator. That randomizes a little bit where the enemies will generate for the player. So we can hook up a single locator to 2 or more items, logic pieces. So in this case, I've made 2 connections for this single locator, one to the first enemy wave generator and one to the second enemy generator. So you don't need extra locators. You can use the exact same locators if you so choose to, and that's why I'm using 15 locators with 11 enemies for each of the 2 enemy waves. and set to random locators, because it spreads them out across throughout the forest area here. We'll do a similar logic setup for the town phase. Wherever the blue dot points, that is the direction that the enemy will be facing when the enemy is generated. So I just spread these out front to back and side to side to ensure that the player would need to move around the map to defeat the 2 enemy waves. So here just showing generated random locator. We've done that for both of the enemy wave generators so that our 11 enemies won't always appear at the same exact locator position. Sometimes you may have multiple enemies generating at a single locator. So sometimes it'll be the mob rules. You'll get attacked by a mob of enemies, and other times they'll be spread out from one side to the other side of the map. And that's the nice thing about the random feature of randomly generating your enemies. So now we're going to set up our logic for our little cutscene, showing the properties here. So the first timer was set to 5 seconds. Our enemy wave generator, so we have 3. We have our 2 HK-87 assassin droids, each set to a count of 1. Talamar Rees is the enemy I'm using to simulate the Magistrate's hired gun, the mercenary Lang. So there's the commando battle droid, the long-range commando battle droid that we're using for our assassin droids, and there's Talamar Rees, who is our mercenary Lang. Notice that they were placed in the order of droid, Lang, droid. That'll be important with the locators. Disable generation effects are turned on again, and generation interval was set to 0. Also for this enemy wave, random was turned off. So I have, we're going to need 3 locators. I previously placed 2 and then realized I needed another one. So this first one, this will be the first HK-87 assassin droid. So new locator connection spawn location. The second one in the middle, this will be our location for Lang. And the third one on the right here will be the second assassin droid. So that's why the order is important for how and where you want them to generate. So I'm picking up the middle one here first, Lang, and we're going to place him right in the middle in front of the camera, with the blue dot facing out towards the forest. So he's facing you, the player, or facing the camera, more important. Alright, this left hand locator was for one of the assassin droids. We'll place that to the left of Lang, up on our wall here. And once again, the blue dot facing outwards toward the camera. And we'll grab our third locator, likewise blue dot facing the forest towards the camera. So Lang and his 2 HK-87s will spawn here for our cutscene once the 2 enemy waves have been defeated inside the in the forest phase of the game. We have a second time delayer. That one is set to a delay time of 2 seconds. And we have a text displayer. Once again, a text duration of 3 seconds and a text style set to banner. Okay, to start this, it's going to be off of this counter. So when the target is reached, we're going to start the first time delayer, set to 5 seconds. That ensures that Lang and his 2 droids are generated before the camera starts. Sometimes there might be a little lag in it. That's why I'm using this time delayer. So new logic completed. When the delay is completed, we'll come over and we're going to activate our camera. So that gives Lang and 2 droids 5 seconds to be generated, for that enemy wave to be generated. So we're going to pick Lang's locator, the center locator, and a new locator connection, and we're going to use that as the camera target. So the camera is pointing right at him. I moved the camera up nice and close so you'll be able to see them well. Here's our properties for the camera. And we're going to want our use define duration actually to on, and then you can choose your display duration. I use 7 seconds, but that's up to you. These are all okay. Player viewport, all players shared viewport is the selection I used. And we want to make sure our camera target is set to the connected locator, which we hooked up to Lang's locator from the enemy wave generator. And those are the properties for our target camera. Okay, our target camera, when it is activated, we're going to come over here and we're going to start the second time delayer set to 2 seconds. So you'll see Lang and his 2 droids, 2 HK-87s for 2 seconds, and then when that delay is completed, new logic connection delay completed, we're going to come over to our text displayer, and he's going to ask you, what do you want? So that is under the question drawer, and what do you want? Now new logic connection, when any text is dismissed, so after the 3 seconds of the text what do you want being displayed, we're going to come over here and we're going to now deactivate the camera. And that will end the little cutscene that exists between the forest phase and then the beginning of the town phase of the challenge. So that completes all the logic connections for the forest phase of the Calodan Magistrate challenge. In the next video, we'll begin the logic connections required for the town phase of the challenge, and then there'll be one last video for the boss fight and ending the game logic. So once again, thanks for watching. Please be safe and be well.